Hi everyone, and thanks for watching. So, UK entry-level job applications. Now, I know firsthand that these can be quite a pain and can use up quite a lot of energy to overcome. But before I dive into kind of the core elements of the job applications, I want to set the scene with a few facts that should help create the right sort of orientation before applying for a job in the UK. And honestly, most of what I say in this video will be applicable in any country that has probably a transparent and advanced jobs market. So for entry-level jobs, there are broadly two types. The first are the ones that you would expect to see, so the ones with minimal requirements and generally low expectations. So, let's say you've recently graduated from university, you've just done an internship, or you're a waiter or waitress and you want to move into a different sector or maybe even start from scratch, you would generally expect applications that don't have lots of requirements. But at the same time, you have a second group of entry-level jobs that demand a lot more in terms of what they expect to see from you. These ones are more challenging, but the basic requirements are the same, despite the difference in the asks. The main thing to understand when applying for these entry-level jobs is that companies do not expect a massive amount from you. They know you will have to learn on the job and get yourself up to speed with what they do. Now, because of this, there are certain things they look for, that they mostly look for in new staff. The first of them is motivation. So they want to see that you really want the job and that you will be committed to the job in the long term. Now, this might not be the case for everyone, but that's a different matter, frankly. Normally they ask questions like, why do you want to work here? Or, tell me what you know about the company. These questions are designed to check how interested or motivated you are for a role. The most interested people tend to have the best answers that are sort of properly researched and very nicely delivered. Another point is the ability to do the job. Now, this could be kind of looking at things like your academic background, your degrees, certificates, GCSEs, or even psychometrics, just to test your ability to do a particular job. It will vary depending on what type of job you're applying for. Or you might do a trial shift or something similar, for example, in the hospitality sector. But what they want to know is, can this person do this job? That's mainly one of the key things that they're looking for. And the third thing they look for is, are you a quick learner? Again, because they don't expect you to know everything, they would want you to learn quickly so you can become productive and sort of valuable to them. So quick learning is a very key aspect of sort of what they're looking for, specifically for these entry-level jobs. This is not to say that they don't look for these same things in other jobs or in higher level jobs. They do. But I would say that they're particularly important in entry-level jobs. So these things, you have to have them in your mind throughout the entire application process. They are kind of fundamental and they will be tested in various forms until you get an offer. And I think I'll probably cover this in more detail in subsequent videos because all of what I just mentioned is part of each of the job application steps. Now, on the topic of applying without lots of experience, there's lots you can do here that can help with your application. So keeping everything I've just said in mind about what companies are looking for, you need to find ways of demonstrating these things. So recap, I've talked through what the companies are looking for, broadly. Now the next step is to tick those boxes. So, say for example you're applying for a corporate job or for a civil service job. Let's say you're a graduate level or something similar. You get questions around projects you've worked on. You also get questions around a time when you've worked in a team to solve a problem, for example. Or let's say some analysis that you've done in the past. These are the sorts of questions that you get at this level. Now, chances are that if you don't have any work experience, you might struggle to answer this question. And some people think these questions are focused on what you've done at work. and there is merit in that. But even though companies prefer examples from actual work, the things you've done in your education are actually more than enough to tackle these questions. And that's just a very key thing to understand. So the question is, how do you then kind of align what you've done at university or similar to what they're asking for in the job application or in specific essay questions, for example? So let's take the one on projects. So for projects you've worked on, think about your dissertation, for example. That's a very big project that you've worked on. And chances are, if you can package your answer very well, you can definitely get very good marks if you can use an example of your dissertation. But dissertation is not the only thing. It's the most weighty thing that you've done and the one that you can talk about. But any sort of relevant assignments you've done are also relevant. You'd be surprised how much work you've done in some of your kind of take-home assignments, which seem like mini pieces of work, but they're actually quite relevant, and you should pay attention to them when you're applying for these jobs, because you need that information to basically tick the box. So you have all this information, all these things that you've done at university, use them, but make sure that they are appropriate in terms of what the question is actually asking. That's very important. Make sure that your answer is relevant to the question. So for teamwork, a group presentation or any kind of group project you've worked on will also work very well. I can even remember from my time that we had lots of kind of mini group presentations that we had to do, or some kind of group projects. I mean, universities, they give you these assignments for a reason. It's not just for the learning process of it, which is also important, but it's quite key for you to get that sort of experience, because this is the kind of stuff you're going to be doing at work, actually. Even though it might not seem that way, that's mostly what you're going to be doing when you're working with actual people in companies. So use those examples. They're quite key. I know that while we're at university, everyone is just playing around. People don't take things very seriously. But those are very good examples. Use them. And another key one that you're very likely to get is an example of analysis that you've done in the past. Now, again, for people who, if you've done chemistry, business, economics, accounting, finance, or whatever it is that you've done, there's always examples of assignments that covered some sort of analysis that you've done. Now, normally the companies, what they're looking for here is to see, first of all, the type of work you've done, your level of understanding of the work you've done, and the amount of sort of skill that you've used in that particular assignment. Those are sort of the things that they look for in the analysis question. So that is kind of a focus point for what you're doing. You need to kind of think about those things when you're answering those questions. That mostly the companies, again, they're trying to kind of gauge where you are as a person, how skilled you are, how intelligent you are, and how motivated you are as well. Because, for example, you might be super smart, but if you don't pay much attention when you're answering that question, the conclusion most of the time is, you don't really want the job. And even though the people who review these applications don't necessarily come out and say, oh yeah, this person didn't or doesn't like the job or isn't motivated about the job, normally they simply pick people who are better or people who answer the questions better. Those people would get preference when it comes to choosing someone for the role. So even though it's not sort of explicit that, if this person doesn't answer the question properly, then, we discredit their application. It doesn't work that way. Most of the time, it's simply a case of if someone answers the question better, that person will get the role. It's normally that simple. So again, my kind of core message is, look at what you've done. Pull out as much information as you can and try to use those things to answer the questions. And I think it is as important looking into your kind of history and what you've done in the past as looking at what the company is actually asking for. Because at the end of the day, what you're doing in essence is you're ticking the boxes of what the companies are looking for. And I'm going to talk about job descriptions in a subsequent video, but that is another kind of core thing that you have to definitely keep in mind. because all these things, they work together. The job application process is one thing from start to finish. That's the way I see it. And I think the next video I'm going to do, I'll talk about that in a lot of detail to say, okay, this is what the companies are looking for, and these are the steps of the application process. And in the case of someone who, let's say, you're applying for something, let's say, you're applying to be a waiter or waitress or something similar. Now, if people are asking for kind of experience that you have, normally they will ask you to do a trial shift because they know that you probably don't have anything that you can present to them. And what they would want to see on the trial shift is, okay, can this person actually do this job? Which is again the same thing as the one for companies in the corporate world or in the civil service. They're assessing the same thing, just in slightly different ways. So that's another thing that you could do. Just do your trial shift properly, know what is required for the trial shift. Now, in some other roles, what you can do is, if you've worked on any projects, it's actually very good for you to see if you can take an example of what you've done. So let's say, for example, you're in IT, and I don't know, let's say you used Python code to create a calculator or something. Now, companies again want to see kind of something you've done. They're trying to find some way of assessing your abilities. And if you have a project that you've done in the past that you can talk through, that's also a very good example of something that you can use for application. So rather than just coming into a room and saying, you have A, B, C, D, E, F skills, the question is, what have you done with those skills? So it's kind of different. So these are what I think are some of the things that would help with entry-level job applications. It's just understanding what the companies are looking for and making sure that you find a way to tick the boxes in terms of what the companies want. I really couldn't add anything to that, frankly. Once you understand that and understand that fully, most of your process will be a lot easier. So I think that pretty much covers it for entry-level jobs, and mainly for applying without experience. I will put together more material in subsequent videos where I will focus on kind of the job application process as a whole, because I think it's very important to talk about it end to end before I then start going into the different elements of it step by step. But for entry-level jobs, applying without experience, I think these are some of the key things that you just need to know. And hopefully you should have a much better experience than some other people who might not know this. So, thanks very much for watching, and be productive. Speak soon.